that's also probably some people are saying we're a few years away from the turn. I don't feel like a generation away.
Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and wherever you are, here I am at an undisclosed location. That is one of those things that is, nostalgic, but it's still fascist. It's still corporate. It's still all of those things. What this does is kind of ease your mind out of whatever may be jarring. Like when it gets to be 50 cents an egg, when, you're any one of the non disclosed enemies of the people are taken away, and put in Gitmo. And that chunk of land, which is bigger than Gaza, has about 12 million Americans there. Ooh. And then they basically, what's that new fast food? Oh, soy and green. I love it. It tastes so good. Oh, ooh, it's yummy. It tastes just like people. Ooh, I know that I shouldn't say that, but it does. It does. It does. How do I know that? Well, that new church, that new mega church, that you have got to bend the knee and kiss the ring of the carrot head. That's the new sacrament. Soy and green. Ooh, it's tasty. I feel a little smarter every time I eat some. I wonder what that is. Anyway, so that's where we are right now. And, you could go listen to guys like Chris Hedges. He does a very nice job. He's talking to this guy right here. And he really kind of puts it down nicely.
Was promoting her endorsement by Dick Cheney, a war criminal who left office with a 13% approval rating. I mean, it shows you how utterly out of touch the Democratic Party has become. But let's say the ruling class. I mean, they live in an echo chamber, which is perpetuated by the media. So they actually don't have a clue about, number one, the damage that they've inflicted. Their whole, 30 million mass layoffs since 1996. And I know half of my family comes from rural Maine. I've seen what NAFTA does. Their reaction is not one I embrace, but I understand the desperation, the anger, the legitimate anger. The towns that, like where my grandparents are from, in Mechanic Falls, Maine, the bank is boarded up. I mean, I remember as a boy, they were never made a lot of money, but my grandfather worked in the post office, and we're deconstructing all of these institutions that once he had a pension, he had a stable income. That's vanished. It's gone. And the Democratic Party is as complicit.
Let me pause you for a second, because I want to drill down on some of these things. You said a lot of really important things. One of the things you just talked about was an out-of-touch elite. We're certainly seeing a growing concentration of wealth and political power among a very small group of people. I think most notably of the fact that Trump has assembled the richest set of advisors and cabinet members in American history. They're worth a collective $450 billion. And of course, there's increased corporate influence and billionaire influence over the Democrats, the Republicans, over the whole political scene. How much of that context is important for understanding the future of American democracy? Is American democracy under threat because of this?
Under threat? Does it exist? I don't think it exists. It's a veneer. It's the end of the Roman Empire. You have the symbols, the iconography, and the language of a democracy, but internally, corporations and oligarchs have seized all of the levers of power. I looked at this election as a battle between corporatists and oligarchs. Corporatists, the Democrats, they want something very different from oligarchs. Corporatists want stability. They want decorum, the kind of decorum that Obama had or Bush had, or Bush was an idiot, but at least he had some, they could clean him up a little bit. And Biden, whatever his cognitive failings were, because they want stability, especially in terms of trade agreements, because they make investments overseas. Takes a while for a return on a profit. Corporatists want something different from oligarchs. Oligarchs are about chaos. They're about, as Steve Bannon said, deconstructing the administrative state. Why? Because it is a pure form of rentier capitalism. And by that, I mean that they make their money by setting up toll booths, Amazon, all of these digital media platforms. It's not about producing goods. And the more that the state is deconstructed, that's why they want to abolish the Department of Education. Everything that we need as a civil society becomes privatized. And you see it in I wrote a book called America, the Farewell Tour. It begins in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where everything, the sewer system's privatized, the parking authority is privatized, the electricity is privatized, and of course they've jacked up the rates, and the services are not very good. And they want to privatize the post office, so we can have a dysfunctional post office like the UK, which is privatized. And so that's what oligarchs want, and the oligarchs have won. They won. And but that's what this battle was about. In terms of if we strip away its the kind of trivia or the cultural differences between the two parties, that at its core was what it's about. And so we have, as you point out, we have now an oligarchic system. But as Aristotle wrote, once you create an oligarchic system with those kinds of inequities, then your only two choices are tyranny or revolution.
You talk about people choosing fascism, people or the conditions being set for people to almost have no alternative choice. And you've written about this idea. You wrote an article, in fact, that I thought was super interesting, how fascism came. Now, that term itself has its roots in Mussolini's authoritarian rule during World War I. I think of brutal oppression. I think of the crushing of dissent. Is it not hyperbolic at this moment in history to say that that's what we're facing here?
Well, every fascist system has its own peculiar characteristics. So you mentioned Mussolini. That was rooted in ancient Rome and the glory of Augustus and all this, whereas German fascism was rooted in Teutonic myths, and Spanish fascism under Franco was something different. Robert Paxton, when he writes his book, The Anatomy of Fascism, he calls the Klan the most authentic fascist movement in American history. And again, Paxton in the book says that it won't come with jackboots and the swastika. It will become with the Christian cross and mass recitations of the Pledge of Allegiance. And I certainly came away after spending 2 years with the Christian right with a belief that these people, that they had politicized and used Christianity to build a native fascistic movement, of course, grounded in white supremacy. And you've seen Trump has no ideology. He's just a grifter. But he has filled that ideological void with these figures like Mike Huckabee, who calls the West Bank Judea and Samaria, or his UN ambassador, who said, suddenly U.S. foreign policy is rooted in biblical myth. But that's where we're headed. And so, yes, I see it as, especially as the system disintegrates. And in terms of voting for, any totalitarian movement is grounded in magical thinking. And when the real world becomes so onerous, so oppressive, so exploitive, and you engender that kind of despair, and all the writers of totalitarianism ground the rise of totalitarian movements, Hannah Arendt, Fritz, all of them, in despair, which is what's happened to a significant part of the country, then you reach out for magical thinking. That's what Trump offers. He none of it is coherent, but fascism's not really a coherent ideology. Thistlethwaite, in his book Male Fantasy, talks about how it's really at its core about hypermasculinity. If you look at Trump as a cult figure, in Margaret Singer's book, Cults and Our Myths, it's about endowing your cultish leader with omnipotent power to do anything.
Let me push back a little bit, because I hear this a lot, and I don't disagree that there's a cultish tenor to much of what we see in the Trump rhetoric and the rhetoric of his followers. But sometimes I worry that using the language of cult makes it seem as if his followers are misled, that they have the world wrong, and that they're always operating against their interests. What do you say to the person who says, well, look, yeah, that might be true in part, but Trump is also advancing policy initiatives that actually are in line with their ideology, whether it's the anti-LGBTQ stuff, whether it's the anti-DEI stuff. There are people who fundamentally believe in what Trump is selling, and they're not being misled. They simply believe things that are in line with his movement.
Well, those are the cultural kind of targets that have been picked out to, I think, mendaciously explain the despair and the economic immiseration that these people live in. The problem is Walmart. The problem is Goldman Sachs. The problem is Citibank. The problem is, but those people are not mentioned. You're mentioning undocumented workers. You're mentioning GBTLQ, people. But let's be clear. Let's go back to the Democratic Party, that they abandoned the working class and they spoke in this kind of, scolding, virtue signaling wokeness, rather than being rooted in the class war that has now largely been finished, but the class war against the working poor and the working class, which they were part of. So you have a reaction to this political correctness, because it was used to demonize a working class that was being pounded to death. And so, yes, there's a reaction, but none of it's dealing with the actual structures of power. None of it's dealing with the reality of why they are where they are. So, yeah, they all hate immigrants the way in Nazi Germany they hated Jews, or the way when I was in Bosnia, the Serbs hated the Muslims and the Croats hated everybody. And so, but that is about transference. It's about the demonization of the other. So in that sense, Trump is a complete grifter, like all demagogues.
Is that what you mean when you talk about the failure of liberalism? You said recently, fascism is always the bastard child of a bankrupt liberalism. Is that bankruptcy about abandoning the working class?
Yeah, it's more than that, but it is largely about that. I mean, I wrote a book called Death of the Liberal Class, and it takes 250 pages.
Why has liberalism failed?
I would go back to the Cold War. So what you did is you created the Cold War liberal. The Cold War liberal was used to eviscerate the left. And remember, with the breakdown of capitalism in the 1930s, you had powerful, especially union movements, the old CIO, the Wobblies, the Communist Party, which we've written out of our history. We were just talking about the great W.E.B. Du Bois, and he was persecuted and stripped of his passport, and arguably America's greatest intellectual, I would say. So the distortion of liberalism, and when Chomsky writes about liberalism correctly, he says liberalism is allowed to exist within a capitalist order because it's a safety valve. It ameliorates the suffering enough to allow capitalism to go forward, which is what FDR did. FDR was pressured into the New Deal reforms by the left, and that's not conjecture, because I've read his private letters to his brother, where he says, if we don't push through these kinds of reforms, including providing employment for 12 million Americans, public works, all this Social Security, 8-hour workday, all of that was being pushed by sit-down strikes, radical unions. And he said, if we don't carry out these reforms, we will get revolution. Those are his words. That was the fear. The specter of the 1917 revolution loomed large, even in the 1930s, over the Western world. And that liberal class has been destroyed. It was used to eviscerate the left, the Cold War liberal, and eviscerate and destroy those liberals, especially with McCarthyism in the 50s. And Ellen Schrecker has written some very good books on this. And so that creation of the faux, I would call it the faux liberal, the Clintons are kind of classic figures like this, where on the one hand, they are the engine, the political engine behind corporate oppression. And on the other hand, they're holding up, their kind of, pronoun uses and all their woke garbage.
You say woke garbage. There are people who are going to hear that, because that language of woke has been appropriated by the right in very particular ways to deny the legitimacy of LGBTQ humanity, to deny the legitimacy of affirmative action efforts or integration efforts, or the language of woke itself has been sort of. I mean, you hear Elon Musk using that word. Does it worry you to use that kind of?
No, because what was wokeness? Wokeness was the corporations love it. They love it. So what is wokeness? A woman CEO? No, it's about empowering working class women. It's a complete inversion.
Do you see wokeness as a kind of superficial approach to dealing with identity politics, or do you see identity politics itself?
I see identity politics as furthering the goals and the rapaciousness of the corporate state. They've embraced it. I mean, you had years ago when AIDS, you had, what was it, Bennington, or I don't know which one it was, one of these big Abercrombie, I don't know, Calvin Klein. They had.
Okay, enough of that. You get the picture, right? So Chris Hedges, you go looking and being interviewed by anybody, he gives you the spiel, which is, straight up classic scholarly definition of what's going on, right? He does a very good job. What are we going to put in its place? That's the real question. Noam Chomsky, the last 7 years of his life, he's scholarly been identifying what it is, but he offers nothing in its place, right? Chris tries to, but he doesn't. He's a really good writer. You should go read his books, And when you kind of mix in guys like David Icke and, Dr. Greer and other guys like, let's see what we can pull up here. Cliff High YouTubes. Cliff High YouTubes. Whoa.
Hello, everyone. Cool Russ here, reporting live from Hyder, Alaska. Don't follow us. Just wanted to announce the daily video is back. We had a slow start this year, but here we are. We're back. We found winter. We're going to be posting one of these every day. You want to communicate with the crew? You want to try to get a message to the riders? Have a question, whatever? Just put it in the comments on YouTube. We'll see it. I'll try and pass it along. So anyway, welcome back.
Oh, here we go. It's an op.
There we go. Okay. It's June 14th, 9:01 a.m. here on the Pacific coast of North America. Wonderful, wonderful North America. But it's like the rest of the planet now. We're getting all kinds of strange energies from space. This is a brief, hopefully, video about Wu-Sci or woo-woo science. As we go forward into these next 15, 18 years, as we're going to restructure the social order and basically within humanity, but seriously within North America, a lot of the
You said this 4 years ago.
old underpinnings of control structures that were related, a lot of underpinnings of the old control structures will fall away. And these will fall away because they are actually bogus claims to science and not real at all. Very much like Fauci's claim that, we're going to have 28 million people dead here of the bioweapon that he paid to have engineered. The generalized social structure is under a great deal of stress because of fake news, fake money, divisive politics, Communist Party of China fucking around with our social order and trying to destabilize the Republic of USA and turn it into a communist dictatorship, and all different kinds of generalized mayhem and so on. But the thing is this a natural occurrence? Is it organic to humans that we're all just pissed now and it's been too long and I can't take it anymore, right? Or is it really a situation of we're all responding to energies and we don't perceive that we're receiving these energies? We don't perceive the impact of the energies on the emulsified microcrystalline antennas that are our brains, but the impacts are nonetheless there, and we're acting out those impacts as this energy is causing our neural masses to not function the way that it used to. And that a lot of it is triggered by hormone reactions that are much more surface level of the molecular biology as we go through. These signaling molecules go throughout the whole body. We know that you can turn systems on and off in the body with light, and that light penetrates quite deeply. So it's not too far of a stretch to understand that we may be being bombarded during this strange solar period with what I've termed strange energies from space. We're all going a little bit batshit crazy because we don't know how to ground them out and deal with it, right? And it takes a little bit more than simply taking your shoes off and standing on some wet earth. That helps because of the ion exchange with the planet itself, and you actually do ground out the way that a hurricane grounds out over land by discharging all of its electricity, and then it goes. It's not that it gets cold. That warm water concept is bullshit, just like the idea that coronavirus is going to go away because the weather gets hot, because it gets warm in summer. That's horseshit. The reason that we have a seasonal affective response to coronavirus is because we all go out in the summertime and make more vitamin D, and so we get sick less, and fewer of us transmit it. Therefore, it dies over summer. So summer is not a good time if you're a virus, because your hosts are out there becoming para-immune. And we can prove that this is a fact just by tracking the seasonal, and everybody that's in medicine admits influenza, the coronaviruses are all, the common cold are all seasonal. Well, why are they seasonal? What changes in the course of seasons? It's not that the planet warms up, it's what changes with us, dumb fuckers. Academia really pisses me off bluntly.
Yes. I'm right there with you.
As people will become aware if they're not already. So real quick, let's go through some stuff here. Okay, so as forecast, I think in July we'll notice for sure, but I've already seen the signs of it, that we've got our breakout in the innovation cycle. It's happening now. And one of the things that I know is one of the indicators I know that this is actually breaking out is because now we're having the society within the North America try and formalize innovation and incentivize innovation here on our soil. Now, these guys think that they're doing it for, USA national security. Okay, they want to have the chips made here. They want that kind of shit here. We want our research labs here. Fuck the Gong Fei, fuck the communist bandits. We want that shit here, and that's fine. But what's really cool for me is it was predicted that in 2020, year zero, we would begin an innovation cycle that had been stifled. Our innovation cycle should have ended, actually, should be in a waning cycle now. If things had been organic and natural since the late 80s, we would have been in a different part of the cycle now, which wouldn't have been very good for us because we would have been in a waning innovation cycle, just as we're about to be hit by all of this strange energies, or as we are being hit by the strange energies from space that are going to lead into this ice age, right? And so that wouldn't have been good. But
did you get that? Lead into this ice age. It's going to be minus 23 degrees here next week. It's been in the 70s last week. And so there you go. we are experiencing these extraordinary changes, and our leadership is like, leading us down the primrose path, and it's like, okay, good luck with that, and we'll see how it goes. So I myself just went to my, I'm old, I'm falling apart, pretty much, right? And I can have open heart surgery, and I can have my knees replaced and my hips replaced. But every time you do that, you're rolling the dice whether it's going to be better. Meaning, if you get that stuff done when you're 20 years old, it's probably your body will respond better. Do it when you're pushing 80, not so much, right? So anyway, that's kind of my experience of what's going on, right? And me, myself, and me. It's not about me, right? It's about everyone out there. That's why I do this show, right? It was interesting earlier this morning. I went on 3 different times, and I didn't use anybody else's words. I used mine to describe all of this. And I would get 15, 20 minutes, just taken straight off. Not like, we'll see if they go up tomorrow. But nobody really looks at my past shows. I mean, I have over 2,000 guys. Go back and look at them. I've been doing this for almost 7 years. I started out talking with the big splat, what we are experiencing. What's coming up here? Let's just do what's coming up. So, Jamie, if you're, you should be the responder to, if you're on Cliff's Substack, give us some, fill in, right? So, but bottom line is, there are all these, back in 1972, I gave a speech at the United Nations amongst some of the most powerful people in the world. And I said, hey, forget about, this alternative thing, this green revolution. It's a joke, right? It's been foretold that we're going to have a warm up. That's just a precursor to an ice age. It's pretty much happened, 6 different times over the last 20 million years. We're just in that swing, right? And so it doesn't matter. And what's, and I kind of was saying, neoliberal, I was using that term. I was talking about 32 was still the height of Cold War, right? Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon. And I said, all of this is a scam. I said, there are already weapons of space, right? There are, high energy weapons, Tesla weapons in space that can change the weather, that can cause earthquakes, that can do all kinds of amazing things, right? And so that's what we've been watching, right? We really don't have to do diplomacy. If Pakistan doesn't do what we do, they have torrential rains and then earthquakes and then a volcano and same with any country that doesn't. And see, it's going to happen in America, and it's going to happen in America before April 1st, somewhere in that time. And there is something is going to, like I was talking earlier when I was talking about this is when I go. So the internet was developed by DARPA, right? And it was developed to basically survive nuclear war, right? There is no central location, but as it's been commercialized, as it has been added on to, there are certain nodes that if you were to take them out, it would stress the whole system to a point where it would crash, right? And if it were to crash, and we've had this, airlines have, we've had experiences of this, right? And if that were to happen in a big way, all our utilities, our gas, electric, water, and septic are all run by off the internet. And if that goes down, all those systems, so you have something on the order, I don't know, somewhere between 20 and 60 nuclear reactors, commercial power reactors in America that should have been closed down 20 years ago, because we haven't built any new ones since you know, 3 Mile Island. So those go offline, and there is no computer backup. You know, all the computers crash, and then nothing can control the reactor. Ooh baby, Fukushima all over America. You don't even need guys throwing nukes at you if you have all your commercial reactors exploding, right? Like Fukushima, meaning when they lose control, when they lose the ability to cool the core, even if they shut down, it gets too hot. The water gets boiled off, and that water is turned into hydrogen and oxygen. And the vessel is sealed, and it gets full of hydrogen and oxygen. What is that but rocket fuel? And if it was just hydrogen, not a big deal. Hydrogen and oxygen, one little spark, one little anything. I mean, that's why 4 reactors blew up in Fukushima. Boom, 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 down the line. It all happened. They lost the power, then they lost the control. They lost the backup power. Within less than 10 hours, they just cooked off, right? And created, pretty nasty radioactive scene in Japan. Zillions of tons of highly radioactive water. So anyway, we won't even have that. It'll just be, a burnt hole in the ground, spewing off, columns of super radioactive steam, because it'll be sucking up the water from the water table, and it'll just boil up and go into the air, and it'll burn everything. I mean, burn the dirt, burn the concrete, burn everything. And the heat will carry it up into the troposphere, which will spread it across the whole friggin' planet. So isn't that fun? Isn't that special, right? And that's probably going to happen this year. I'm looking at maybe 3 or 4 billion people dying before 2028, right? So what are you going to do about that? Not much. The best you can do is get right with yourself and everyone around you, and not do magical prayer, but in every day, in every way, take the peace of the earth and make it stronger. Because if we do that, then all this crazy, carrot head and neon husk and all the other fascist poster boy oligarchy will have something to go up against. So, Jamie, what do you got for us? Anyway, go take a look at my early morning things when they come. If they do get put up. Anyway, what can I say? But I'm going to go now. I've been sitting in this hardwood chair a bit too long, and I'm going to get home. So anyway, stay well, be good. I'll talk to you soon. I may see you tomorrow if I get out. If the weather isn't too crazy. It's supposed to be that shit crazy tomorrow. And Wednesday and Thursday were, all I could do is sit in my chair while it rained, or lie in bed while it rained, and change the buckets. So it's like being on Noah's Ark without the animals. Okay, kids. See you later.